10-year-old. If you can come up with a good answer, tell me. So here's Prahlad. He's only 5, and he's got an answer. That was lesson number 2. Here's lesson number 3, or teaching number 3. You know these. We'll say them together. This is the 9 processes. Excuse me. The 9 processes of bhakti. What's the best thing you've learned? Learn devotional service. Let's start with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishno Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Bandhanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam Iti Pungsarpita Vishno Bhaktischenava Lakshana Kriyeta Bhagavat Yadha Tanmanye Ditam Uttamam. So there's the 9 processes of devotional service. And Nava Lakshana, there are these 9 characteristics. And they bring one to the stage where one's intelligence, tanmanye ditam uttamam. And teaching number 4. Matirna Krishne Paratak Svatova Mito Vipadyeta Grahak Pratanam Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram Punak Panascharvita Charvananam Punak Panascharvita Charvananam. And then doing it again. Punak Charvita Charvananam. And then doing it again. So here's the translation. Because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too addicted to materialistic life make progress toward hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never roused either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by combination of both. Interesting translation. Paraksvatova mito. So that's the 4th teaching. Now, Hiranyakasipu didn't like this one either. Now, I added a 5th one because we were going over it and over it and over it and over it and over it. So here it is again. Number 5. There's a learned fellow who's writing a book, or a philosopher, stroking his beard. We discussed this Mundaka Upanishad verse, Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo Na Medya Na Bahuda Shrutena. That was the first half. One cannot become self-realized simply by having an academic education, Pravachanena, by presenting lectures in an erudite way, or by being an intelligent scientist who discovers many wonderful things. You're too popular. You have, I'm talking to our host. You have too many friends. You shouldn't be so nice so you won't have so many friends. So we can fit in here more easily.
All your blessings, Maharaj. I cannot believe how kind you are.
Don't be so friendly. Or get a bigger space or something. Or build a balcony or something. Okay. So we spent some time, those of you that were with us, you remember, round and around and around. So, but this was the first half, and people got confused because the second half says something else. The Lord is obtained only by one whom he himself chooses. That's in contrast to the Nayam Atma Pravachinin Labhyo Na Medya Na Bahuna Shrutena. That person can't, but the Lord, he chooses one who is his devotee. That's why. To such a person, he manifests his own form. So that's a review from chapter 5. And we spent some time, a little bit, in chapter 6, discussing some teachings, and now we're going to go further, because what happens at the end of chapter 5? There's some torture. Hiranyakasipu tries to kill Prahlad, and nothing happens. And so he's really worried. He's afraid. He wants to put him in jail. And his teachers say, don't worry, he's just a little boy. We'll work him over, and he'll be fine. And so they move on. And chapter 6 begins. He's going to speak to his classmates. Remember? Remember? You weren't with us. Do you know the Bhagavatam well enough to know what happens? This flow of sequence of events? Prahlad was tortured, attempted murder in many ways, didn't work. His powerful father was wondering, what's going on? He's so powerful. I'm the most powerful, and I can't do anything to harm him. What's going on? Shanda and Marka, the two Brahmin sons of Shukracharya, they pacify him. He's just a boy. He's speaking silly things. We'll work him over. He'll become normal. Don't worry about it. So he turns them over to the teachers. And that's how chapter 5 ends. Chapter 6 begins, they're in school. And to attend to some household duties, they leave the classroom. The kids want to play. And Prahlad is going to tell them otherwise. Now, I added this picture of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because there's a very nice verse that many of you know, and we can say it together. It's a verse composed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya describing the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's do this. I learned this from your brother. Your brother gave a seminar on Sandarbhas. We know one of the Sandarbhas, but it was a class on the Sandarbhas. So this is something I learned from his brother. Any great acharya, Jiva Goswami is one, wants to show that the person who they're following gives the best teachings. Naturally, they want to do that. Naturally, they want to do it. They're not going to want to do something else. They want to do that. And so his strategy was very simple, at least the first part and the third part. The first part is the best of all scriptural evidence is Srimad Bhagavatam. That's Tattva Sandarbha. Pull up a balcony seat. Come on in. Just stay right where you are. You're just fine. You're just fine. Because you want to see the screen, right? No. We're not. Don't do that. Yeah, you. Yeah. Tattva Sandarbha is the first half of Tattva Sandarbha is called Pramana Kanda. What does pramana mean? Any of our younger generation people know what pramana, you know what pramana means? Pramana means evidence, or the means of knowing something. So there are three means of knowing something: direct sense perception, pratyaksha; reason and logic, anuman, reason and logic; and shabda means sound. So the best means of knowing things is shabda. And the best shabda is shabda that's coming from a perfect person. Aparusheya shabda. Aparusheya means beyond the fallibilities of a human being. That's parusha shabda. Then there's aparusheya shabda. Sound vibration that's beyond the fallibility of a conditioned soul. The best means is aparushaya shabda. That's the Vedas. Then he goes through this exercise. It's really not going to give a... So there are different portions of the Vedas, and the best part of the Vedas, without all the detail, it goes through step by step by step, is Srimad Bhagavatam. So the end of Tattva Sandarbha is the best. If you want to know anything, certainly if you want to know it begins by saying, let's talk about the absolute truth. But before we speak about the absolute truth, what's the way to know the absolute truth? And for that matter, what's the way to know anything? That's pramana, the means of knowing something. So then he goes through this exercise. The best means of knowing anything, what to speak of, that which is beyond the senses, is the authority that's infallible. Aparushaya Shabda Praman. Exclamation point. And then the exercise is the challenging one. This is from your brother. The challenging one is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya, I'm going to show you the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in just the next slide, the teachings are the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the conclusion, number 3, therefore the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the best. You get the logic? The best means of knowing something is infallible source, hearing from an infallible source. Srimad Bhagavatam is the best of infallible sources. It's the best of the Vedas. And that's the first part of... Come on in, lots of room. You come to the right place at the right time. There's lots of friends here. They're all friends of our host. Don't redirect traffic right now, please. Just stay where you are. You're fine. Be happy. Thank you. So, one more time. Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest truth. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the highest truth. 1, 2, 3. So the bulk of the Sandarbhas is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. So his methodology was, he would make a statement that was from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. He would support it with teachings from Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he would say 10 other sources that say what the Srimad Bhagavatam says. Then he would say the Purva Paksha folks, the arguing people would say, no, something, and then he'd refute that something. And then to that they would say something, and to that I would refute that something, and he's, checkmate. Next. And anyway, that's his methodology. So here's Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Let's say it together. Vairagya vidya nitya bhakti yoga shikshartam ekam purushak puranaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shariradhari Kripam Budhiryas Tamaham Prapadye. So the emphasis is going to go to these first 2 words, Vairagya Vidya, that is Nija Bhakti Yoga, that his own devotional service to Lord Chaitanya, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Shariradhari, devotional service unto him, his own devotional service, that is unto Krishna, awakens knowledge and detachment. Devotional service awakens knowledge and detachment. And the teachings of Prahlad is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Let's go forward and see how it's true. He's going to give this whole explanation. We saw this slide. Supposing somebody lives for 100 years, and here's the breakdown of 100 years. 10 years in childhood, bewildered. 10 years in boyhood, sporting. 60 years in attached household life, and 20 years being in old age, an invalid, if you live 100. Where's spiritual elevation? And then he gives another one, 50% in sleep. That's a lot of sleep. And 20 years in child, boyhood, and old age, and that gives 30 years wasted in household life. Take this package or that package, is, you know. So knowledge and detachment, kids. One is certainly very attached, this is chapter 6, purport, to family life, but if one gives up attachment to family life to be attached to the service of the Lord, well, I didn't read it right. If one gives up attachment to family life to become attached to the service of the Lord, one must undergo the same endeavor and trouble. Therefore, what's the benefit of taking trouble to engage in the service of the Lord? So that's the Purva Paksha, folks. Look, you Hare Krishna guys, you go, oh, you have austerities. Look at this. It's too hot in the room, and there's everything's so packed up, and no, you just turn the thermostat down. Tell your wife to turn the thermostat down. You have a way to do that? There's the thermostat. Turn it down a little bit. So we want things comfortable, right? So the arguing person would say, don't become a devotee, because if you become a devotee, then you'll also have to undergo trouble. So what's the benefit of becoming a devotee, undergoing trouble? When you do it this way, you undergo trouble. So why become a devotee? Some people will argue. And the answer, this is the verse. See this chapter 6, verse 19. That's the purport. Here's the verse. My dear sons of demons, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, is the original Supersoul, the Father of all living entities. Remember, one can't perceive the Supersoul if you're covered with all these other things. That was to his Father. Consequently, there are no impediments to pleasing him. I hope you've noticed there's no impediments to pleasing him. The impediments is the mind and what's created by the mind. So just get rid of your mind. Switch it to off. Can't do that. You have to purify it. No impediments to pleasing him or worshiping him under any conditions, whether one be a child or an old man. The relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Personality of God, it is always a fact. And therefore there is no difficulty in pleasing the Lord. Now he's saying, in other words, it's natural. Because Atmavat Sarvabhutanam, Atmavat, having the quality of Atma, the Father of all living entities. So there's a natural relationship between Father and Son, or daughter and son. There's a natural relationship. And the natural relationship from the Father to the son or daughter is they feel affection. Natural. And reciprocally, the child, son or daughter, will feel affection for an affectionate father, mother. And so it's natural. That's the point. Devotional service is natural. And to do it, it's pretty simple. Just patram pushpam palam toyam. Remember we discussed this little passage from the life of Ramanujacharya? Remember that one? He was given the service by Kanchi Purna to just take water from the well and offer to the deity, and everything that you desire will be fulfilled. Now, it's not mechanical, it's with love and devotion. And you do something, it's as simple as that, whatever it may be. And what did the gopis do? They just picked flowers. But it's not just they picked flowers. Everything was done for Krishna. They made garlands, and they made ornaments, and they were so absorbed. So we do those things. We can do those things mechanically, or we can do those things devotionally. And so it doesn't have to be, You don't have to be super wealthy or super anything. Just have to be a simple person with a simple heart and do some simple service with love and devotion. You do something grand, that's also nice. Do something simple, that's also nice. It's not difficult, that's the point. Not difficult. It's natural and easy to please the personality of Godhead. Under any conditions, whether a child or an old man. So these are young boys. He just went, twice. He went through live 100 years, and you're wasting it. Don't waste it. Use time now. In the tender age of childhood, that was that first verse that we heard. So now we're already to verse number 19. There's a little boy learning to play mridanga, following probably his father. A simple endeavor of Shravanam Kirtanam, Vishnu, can make one successful in pleasing the Lord. Anukulyena Krishna Dushilanam Bhakti Ruttama. One's duty is to revive one's relationship with Narayana. This is just to underscore how devotional service is natural, like father to son or son to father. It's natural. And it's easy. I mean, that little boy may not have great rhythm, but probably in course of time, by practice and good instruction, he can become a nice mridanga player. And so forth. Just like, around here, there are many young people, and they're learning to sing very nicely. By the way, you sang very nicely. So others were also singing very nicely. And you're virtuoso, you're not a super singer, but you're learning. And from the tender age of childhood. Aham bija pratak pita. What does this verse mean? Who knows the meaning? Put your hand up without just blurting it out. Aham bija pratak pita. I see one hand. What does it mean? Yeah. He's the bija prada. He's the seed-giving father, pita, of all living entities. So it's natural, because Krishna is the father, the seed-giving father of all living entities. Therefore, it's natural, because Lord Vishnu, this is Prabhupada's purport to text number 2, is the most beloved, the master of the soul and the well-wisher of all living beings. Hey, look at this. There it is. Jivana was bringing our attention to these 3 terms. But Prabhupada is in the purport pointing to them again, just as you did, because it's important. It's natural for those reasons. No difficulty in reestablishing the natural, intimate relationship between Narayana and the jivas, just like that of a father and a son. That is, it's natural. And the method is also very simple. Now, someone may doubt, what about me? I'm not a very important person. I'm a skeptic. Do I fit into this picture? Simply by understanding these 3 facts. What's this? Bhagavad Gita. The Supreme Lord Vishnu is the proprietor of the entire creation. He is the best well-wishing friend of all living entities, and he is the supreme enjoyer of everything. One becomes peaceful and happy, even that little fellow. So I'm looking at our younger generation people and see if anybody knows this verse in Bhagavad Gita. This is a verse in Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada's just paraphrasing it. You know the verse? No? Anybody? Bhaktaram Jagatapasam. You know the verse? Whoa. I'm looking at the younger generation people. The one that like to have kirtan, and see if they like to verses in Bhagavad Gita. Bhaktaram Jagatapasam. Keshava, you know? Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Suradam Sarvabhutanam. Rings a bell? No bells are ringing. Who knows the verse? You know the verse? Okay, let's hear what part you know. Sarva Loka. That's the second one. Suhridam. Sarva Bhutanam. Sarva, all living entities. A Suhrid, because let's go back. There's the word Suhrit at the end of that three. Priya, Atmeshwara, Suhrit. Suhrit means friend. So Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. Gyatvamam. Gyatvamam just means, Gyatva means to know. Those who know me in this way, Shantim, they become peaceful. Shantim Richati. So those three things. Bhoktaram Jagatapasam, all tapasya, all austerities that one performs, he's the enjoyer. He's the bhokta of whatever austerities we do. You go to school? Is it an austerity? Who's the enjoyer? You? There's somebody that's the enjoyer. And it should be done in that mood. When it's done in that mood, then it's devotion. And otherwise, it's a grind. So, Bhoktaram Jagatapasam, Sarva Loka, all planets, Sarva Loka, Maheshwaram, Maha Ishvara, he's the enjoyer of everything. He's the enjoyer of sacrifices, he's the proprietor of everything, and he's the well-wishing friend of everyone. And by understanding those three things, one becomes peaceful and happy. There it is. It's a nice verse. It's the last verse of chapter 5, Bhagavad Gita. Nice verse to learn. Thank you for learning most of it. Okay. Even little endeavor can give complete satisfaction and protection. Wow, this is another Bhagavad Gita verse. Swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. You know the verse? Swalpam means a little. Swalpam apyasya, api, although, swalpam apyasya dharmasya, dharma, religious activity, trayate mahato bhayat. Whoa. There's a Jamila, he just unintentionally thinking of his son, was calling the name of his son, but he named his son after the Supreme Lord Narayana because in his youth he was a Brahmana, didn't go to waste. He called his son Narayana. So when the Yamadutas came because it was the time of death, and he called Narayana, and that little endeavor, look at this. Even a slight amount of sincere devotional service can give one complete perfection. Remember that? That's from the first verse. We spent some time on this first verse when he's speaking to his classmates, and where someone was wondering, wow, really? Maybe I'll just do a slight amount of devotional service. Wait a minute now. There's potency, and that can carry one like, if you want it to end like a Jamila, okay. But there it is. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya. If one performs even very slight devotional service, Narayana is always ready to save one from Mahabhaya. What's Mahabhaya? Maha means great. Not only means prasadam. Maha means great. And Bhaya means fear. There's Mahaprasadam, there's Mahabhaya. Mahabhaya. Prabhupada said the greatest fear is seeing the Yamadutas. The greatest fear, Mahabhaya, that even Svalpam Apyasa, so he saw the Yamadutas, but he was protected from the Yamadutas by even a slight. He was saved from that great danger. Don't go to that place with the Yamadutas. It's not a nice place. Okay, so now we're moving on. Now, remember, the backdrop here is Vairagya Vidya. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya is Vairagya Vidya. So he's teaching his classmates knowledge and detachment by giving them Sambandha Gyan. But the Sambandha Gyan, the knowledge of our relationship with the Supreme and everything's relationship with Supreme, is covered by the external energy. And when covered by the external energy to the atheist, he appears to be non-existent. He appears to be non-existent. We had this nice discussion in the morning class with the Chinese devotees from Light of the Bhagavat. And how to, when you see a tree, you know that, at least theoretically, you know that it has roots, but you don't see the roots. But without the roots, you don't have the life of a tree. So we don't see Krishna, but we want to serve Krishna through our senses to serve He who is beyond the senses at Hoksaja. It's a mystery. You got the mystery? What a nice definition of devotional service. Definition of devotional service. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. Bhaktir Uchate. Bhaktir Uchate. It is said that bhakti is using the senses to serve the master of the senses. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. Now, how do you serve one who you don't see using the instruments that you can see? One of the names of Krishna is Adhoksaja, He who's beyond the senses. So we're supposed to serve He who's beyond the senses with our senses. Huh? How does that work? And why should somebody do that? That's what this young boy was asking me. That 10-year-old boy, as I'm walking out of the hall in Oswego. Why should one be interested in understanding Supreme when you can just use your senses for what everybody uses their senses for? Get on with life, enjoy, eat, drink, and be merry. Boo-hoo. That's your child? No. You recognize the cry. It's amazing how parents... Okay, so I've seen it just my memory is sorry, I'm just being comical tonight. Sitting in Gitanagri, somewhere in the hall, a child starts to cry. Immediately, the mother and father of that child, they know it's their child. They get up and they go take care of the child. All the other parents sit there and it's like, it's not their child screaming. They just know. But it's, the responsible parent, immediately they attend to the need of the child because the child is saying, I need something. And then they have to figure out what the child needs. They can't speak, so they have to figure it out. So, covered by the external energy, to the atheist, he appears non-existent. So, there was this nice picture, really real clear picture. There's a tree, and then there's the earth, and then there's the extensive root structure underneath. And we don't see the root structure. And we're supposed to water the root, although you can't see the root. We're supposed to use our senses to serve the master of the senses who we can't see or perceive in other ways. So, how does it work? It's with faith. So it's based on, bhakti is based upon receiving bhakti from one who has bhakti. Say it again. Bhakti is based upon receiving bhakti from one who has bhakti. And when you have a little bit of bhakti, then you value it and you try to grow it by the process of shravanam kirtanam, and it starts just watering the root of the tree. And then when the root becomes strong, the leaves and branches and twigs and fruits and everything becomes nourished and flourished. So life becomes different when you do the shravanam kirtanam, using your senses to serve He who is beyond the senses. But then this other teaching is, to such a person who faithfully serves like that, the Lord may choose to reveal Himself to such a person. And to the others, He remains covered by the curtain of the external energy. Does somebody remember the phrase in Queen Kunti's prayers? There it is. Very good. Javanika, Maya Javanika. The Lord, this is Canto 1, Chapter 8, Kunti's prayers. The Lord conceals himself. She says to Krishna, Queen Kunti says to Krishna, worldly people can't see you. She sees him, but they don't see Krishna as she sees him. They see him in some other way. He's covered by this external energy. So how do you remove that covering? Well, Krishna removes the covering, but the bhakti process is a way to, from our side, work at having the covering removed, and Krishna is the one who's going to remove the covering if it's going to get removed. And in the verse, in Prahlad's verse, in these verses in chapter 6, avyayam, avyayam. It's imperishable, but here Prabhupada has used the word irreproachable. He can't be faulted for anything. Irreproachable. Therefore, he's advising his classmates, act for the Lord's satisfaction. And it doesn't matter what one's background is. One can be this or that or the other thing. It doesn't matter. Because all living entities are parts of Krishna, like sons are from their father, and he's the seed-giving father. And so he's ready to accept everyone and anyone. Therefore, my dear young friends born of demons, please act in such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your demoniac nature and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all living entities by enlightening them in devotional service and thus becoming their well-wishers. Sankirtan parties heading out the door from the classroom into the kingdom of Hiranyakasipu. There they go. Preaching is the best service to the Lord. He is immediately extremely satisfied. And Prabhupada quotes this verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, just after the Sarvadharmam Pratyaja verse. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. Harinam Sankirtan. Here is Sridhar Swami in a different scene. These village people, who knows what they are, workers or something, and the little boy is going to give them some Prabhupada's books. And the government officers are there just in case there's a riot or something, I guess. Sauhridam, friendliness, the characteristic of a devotee. As one performs this service for humanity without discrimination between friends and enemies, the Lord becomes satisfied and the mission of one's life is fulfilled. Now, Sridhar Swami did so many things like you see him doing right now. Very big-hearted person, very hardworking, very intelligent, very self-sacrificing, and always thinking how to give to others. We had lots of association with one another for quite some time. He's a very special person. So moving on. Nothing remains unobtainable for one who satisfies the Lord. There's Cupid in the bottom left, there's money, there's books. But look, there's the Vaikuntha Vimana taking somebody to the spiritual world. Looks like Dhruva Maharaj. Dharma, Artha, Kama, or Moksha, simply wait to serve a devotee at the first opportunity. Dharma, Artha, Kama, or Moksha, simply wait to serve a devotee at the first opportunity. I have one of those little devices that has all of Prabhupada's recordings, and I've been of late listening to Prabhupada. He's in Bombay, Juhu, and the temple isn't finished yet. It's 19 75, January. Stayed there for like almost a month and a half. And this morning class I was hearing, he's saying, just like this land here in Juhu, we didn't have any money. But Krishna gave the money because we wanted to build him a temple. And so it's like that. You don't have to dharma, artha, kama, or moksha, simply wait to serve a devotee at the first opportunity. No, there was some endeavor. The devotees were getting something together. They had a restaurant and they had a this and a that. But, at that time, they really had nothing but bhakti. And Krishna was supplying everything. They were doing bhakti yoga service, book distribution and life membership and so many other things. But Krishna supplied everything. Do not desire or aspire for these material attainments. There's the Vairagya Vidya. There it is. The teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. And since Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest teachings, the teaching of Lord Chaitanya are the highest teachings. It's not a new message. The message of pure devotion is this: do not desire or aspire for these material attainments. If there's something needed, that will come. So you don't do stuff, go to school, get your career, do stuff because it's going to get you what you want. And that's material life. And material life is replaced by spiritual life. We do things for the pleasure of Krishna. And when we do things for the pleasure of Krishna, then there isn't other things. Then life becomes for Krishna. And life is filled with so many things that's for Krishna. The principle is simple. And then the accomplishing of that principle, the obstacle is our dear mind and our friend, the false ego. They get in the way. We're almost done. Only by the spiritual master's mercy is it possible to understand this confidential knowledge. So he got mercy, as did Dhruva from Narada Muni. Lord Narayana formerly explained this transcendental knowledge to the great saint Narada. It is extremely confidential and difficult to understand. Only by Narada's mercy and in disciplic succession can one understand. This is Prabhupada's purport. Now later it's going to come up. The kids are going to ask, gosh, where'd you learn all this stuff? That's next chapter. Srila Prabhupada in New York. Realization of the Lord is possible only in the association of devotees. Look at that nice expression on Prabhupada's face. The living entity in the material condition wanders through many varieties of life and many varieties of circumstance. But if he comes in contact with a pure devotee and is intelligent enough to take instructions from the pure devotee regarding the process of devotional service, he can understand the Supreme Personality Godhead, the origin of Brahman and Paramatma, without difficulty. Sounds really easy. Why is it not so easy? It's the mind. Really? Really? And this companion, false ego. I received this knowledge from the great Saint Narada Muni, who was always engaged in devotional service. This knowledge, which is called bhagavat-dharma, is fully scientific. It is based on logic and philosophy and free from all material contamination. This is Prabhupada's purport, of course. Free from all material contamination. Krishna. Surrender to Krishna. Surrender to Krishna. Prabhupada's purport. Harer Nama, Harer Nama, Harer Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo nastyeva, nastyeva, nastyeva gatir anyata. One need only chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Everyone engaged in the practice of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra will be completely cleansed from the core of his heart and be saved from the cycle of birth. And the Prabhupada is so encouraging. And then comes the application, and somehow there's something that happens in between the instruction and the application. Back to the first verse of this chapter from the purport. The Krishna consciousness movement is anxious to serve human society by teaching people to perform devotional service which can save a human being from being degraded again to animal life. So much effort is being made to help people being saved from being degraded again. And many people are headed in that direction. So this is Prahlad. And the last verse that we're going to discuss is shown on the screen here. The sons of the demons replied, Dear Prahlad, neither you nor we know any teacher or spiritual master other than Shanda and Amarka, the sons of Shukracharya. After all, we are children, and they are our controllers. For you especially, who always remain within the palace, it is very difficult to associate with a great personality. Dear friend, most gentle one, would you kindly explain how it was possible for you to hear Narada? Chapter 7 coming up. So that's chapter 6 incomplete. And so we've covered so far chapters 5 and chapter 6 in different parts. And we're getting teachings of pure devotional service. And as mentioned, I'll mention it again, Prabhupada loved, pay attention specifically when you're hearing recorded lectures, and in how many times, almost every class, not all, but almost every class, Prabhupada refers to one or another of these verses of Prahlad that we just covered in chapters 5 and 6. He loved them. Why? Because he wanted to bring people to a position of happiness so they didn't have to unnecessarily suffer. So that's the teachings of, like Prahlad is doing with his classmates. So Prabhupada was being Prahlad's agent, or the agent of Srimad Bhagavatam, the agent of disciplic succession, giving the teachings of pure devotional service to the world. And it's still going on after his lifetime, giving the teachings of pure devotional service to the world. Even the course of being here, a couple people have shared with me how it's still going on. Just reading Prabhupada's books is helping people in this part of the world, that part of the world, and so on, becoming, enlivened. Gosh. Just it's strong impact, so I'll share it. A while ago, I was invited to take part in a Zoom class with some people from Tamil Nadu. So there was a translator, a Tamil translator. And then there came question time. There were like 50 people online, none of whom I know. They don't know me. I don't know them. It was the first. So in the question to answer thing, there was a lady, Dr. something, and she said, I'm 50 years old. I'm a professional physician, and I know what my swadharma is. My swadharma is medical practice, and I'm locked in. Usually locked in. This is my duty for the rest of my life. And just 6 months ago, she's a 50-year-old medical doctor. Just 6 months ago, someone gave me Bhagavad Gita, and now from reading Bhagavad Gita, I understand that's not it. So now how do I incorporate this which I've heard in my life, which is already filled with swadharma? Could you explain? 50 years of age, who knows how many hundreds and hundreds and thousands of hours she's invested in her education and her career, and she's not dissatisfied. She likes her career. She understands this is my calling. This is my swadharma. And now I have this other thing, and I'm busy. How do I do it? Can you explain? So, my point is simply, Prabhupada's books are transforming the lives of people even today. It's living beyond his life through the form of his book, which he said would happen, and it's happening. And let it happen. So our interest in distributing books is a very important thing, not just distributing books, but distributing books. And then somewhere along the line, some people who receive books are going to have their lives impacted. And we never know. You never know. But somewhere it's going to happen, and somewhere it's going to be something, and somewhere it's going to be more than something. And it's book distribution, and then encouraging people to read systematically, all of those things. That's such a function that every one of us in this room, and all the people that aren't in this room too, can play in the expanding this mercy that Prahlad Maharaj is giving to his classmates and Prabhupada was giving to us, and repeating again and again and again and again, because he wanted people to be happy and not unnecessarily have to suffer in the material conception of life. And if someone doesn't do that, it's going to be the material conception of life by default. That's not nice. So what can we do? We're little people. Distribute books and encourage and be models of what's written in those books. That's another nice service. And that will help attract people to receive, just like this gentleman, that came and the neighbor. Nice fellow.
I spoke to him, he said, but attracted by seeing all of you and especially you. Then he said, please come. He came in.
Good. A nice man. Gentle man. So if he, I'm sure, supposing he continues being, most likely, he'll continue being an ordained minister. Let him read Prabhupada's books. And what will happen is the message in Prabhupada's books will filter into his presentation to those persons who is the ordained minister of. The message of pure devotion will filter through. And that's what's wanted, whatever the denomination and ism and things like that. The message of pure devotion. I don't, the world that we live in sometimes gets to be pretty small because we don't move in big circles. But one of the advantages, there's many, one advantage of being a sannyasi is that I get to experience different things, and I'm sharing. It's becoming more of a thing that rather than people being intimidated by, the externals of Krishna consciousness, they can be a little more comfortable with, we're here to stay, and so I better find out about these people. And they start to read, and so our character means so much, but they start to appreciate that message, and they start to live that message, even if their lifestyle is something over there, or their religion by birth and by culture is something over another place. Bhakti is like osmosis; it just keeps spreading. So we have to be little emissaries of bhakti, and that's how the world can become a better place and less suffering, although we're little people. We're really little people. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. She's in the front row.
Can I just put that?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think you just answered the question to that little boy's question of happiness and why do we seek happiness. I feel like you just answered it with this, more of a comment, but to end the suffering, so we don't have to suffer and so the world can be a better place.
Well, why is that important? This little boy is a philosopher. He's just not going to take common sense. He wants a philosophical. You defeat me, please.
Right. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
heard that twice now that you just mentioned that point, and I thought that was probably a pretty good answer.
Yeah,
I mean, it
good.
works for
It
me.
is a good answer.
Yeah.
I'll introduce you to this young man, and
Yeah.
see if he says,
I'm
"Oh,
okay.
I'm convinced it was a good answer."
Thank you.
Okay, someone else back here.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
He's the only person. You know how I like to give out prasadam. He's the only person. He said no, thank you. No, his older brother who's like 12. The older brother said no, so his younger brother said no. He's not like a demon. He's just like, you got to convince me or I'm not going to have anything to do with you. Anyway, he has a chip on his shoulder. Go ahead.
Guru Maharaj, I had this question from Saturday evening. This particular phrase caught my attention. Hiranyakasipu was saying to Prahlad Maharaj, "O most fallen in the family," though he is the most elevated in their family. And yesterday's discussion, Shruti's question about give up all your engagements. So I was thinking about sometimes we see the kids, I mean, not kids anymore, all of them are getting into their teenage and adult phase, young adults. So as parents, we know that Kaumara Acharit Prajna, that is the most important thing. Yet, we want them not to become burdens to the temple or society or the community. So we want them to be self-dependent. So that is why, though we don't want to encourage them for material aspirations, we want them to be independently sustainable. But I have been seeing few kids, it's anyway materialistic. It doesn't matter. I don't want to focus on my studies. Kind of
Don't want to focus on?
studies. And you actually mentioned, don't do this as a joke. I mean, looking at them. So I just wanted to hear more follow-up to Shruti's question as well.
Okay, it is a follow-up on Shruti's question. It's just another application of her question.
I also would like to hear...
Well, before we do the also, let me do this one. It's a similar question and similar answer. So, the answer that I gave her was the Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja answer. Now, one idea can be karma sannyas, and the other idea can be there's all of these principles that Krishna has given may have their place, provided their one thing is in place. And what's that one thing? Mamekam Sharanam, or give up all engagements. Is you do this one thing, and all the other things they take on importance because of the one thing. But the rejection, let's say young people into their studies because it's material anyways, it has its place. It has its place. What's the place? The place is, this is what I say to young people when they say like this. I don't remember the studies that I underwent. I don't remember, I remember some of the names of the teachers and some of the topics that we taught and learned. I don't, but I'd have to do a whole refresh to be able to do some of that stuff again. But there was a certain discipline that I'm carrying with me today. That discipline that I'm carrying with me today. And I don't remember the topics, but there's a certain discipline. And so, like anything, it requires academic structure. There's a discipline. What's the outcome of that particular course or that particular period of study or something? You may not carry that with you, but you carry with you the quality of controlling the mind and directing with the intelligence towards a certain. So it has its place. And it's nurtured by good education. So now a good education means ideally a good teacher. So where's the good teacher in schools today? So therefore, the good education at home that comes with the values of the family, that's, homeschooling is the best. But for those that don't do the homeschooling program, the discipline that comes from the academic part can be assisted or given, not assisted, it can be given some meaning and some value by the devotional principle with which you do it. Because take that same question and then say, what about later in life, which was Shruti's question. Things that we need to do as householders. What about job? And it's just material. And what about kids? They're just material. And what about the home? It's just material. And just about everything is just material. You checked out. And that's not what spiritual life is. So what's spiritual life for a young person that's going to school? Is there a place for it? A young person's growing in spiritual life? Yes. It's not the subject matter per se. It's the discipline involved and how you can apply that discipline in your devotional life. Do it for Krishna. And that's a puzzle. How do you do it for Krishna? How do you do academic work for Krishna? Come on. So there's a way. It's indirect, but there's a way.
I have one small.
You have one small.
Yes.
One small house too.
Narayana Samhita says that chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra knowingly, unknowingly, you get the same benefit.
Why do you say that?
In Narayana Samhita, somewhere it says that Yashagadam
Somewhere it says that.
Yashagadam Vidiyatam Ajanat Apyatma Gunam Kuryan Mantra Ayudahataha. It says that if one chants Hare Krishna Mahamantra knowingly or unknowingly, get the same benefit.
Not the same benefit.
But my question is, when you do devotional service without any understanding or knowledge, when you engage devotional service, one can get the same benefit.
I don't. Let's back up. You're making a statement, a premise that I don't think is correct, and then based upon the premise that I don't think correct, you're now extending it to another premise. There's benefit, yes, but it's not the same benefit. When back to that image, when Ajamila called Narayana, it wasn't the same benefit as what happened later after the Yamadutas took off. He went to a Vishnu temple and perfected his life. So there's benefit. They were protected by that benefit, but it's not the same. It's not equal. So unknowingly or knowingly, there's benefit, but not equal benefit. And so same with the name. If the premise is right, then I can just go on mumbo jumbo and chant my japa and become a pure devotee. But that's not what the teaching is, nor is it our experience. There's benefit. Abhas nam.
No.
The shadow is not the same as the object. There's benefit in abhas nam, the nam abhas. There's benefit, for sure. And there's different dimnesses and brightnesses of nam abhas as well. Okay? Aha.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So I had a small question. Prahlada's friends, they were listening to Prahlad, right? But my question is, how did they feel that natural inclination to listen? Because they were born into a demon family and they've been raised their entire life as demons. So how did they?
Because he was such a warm and leader type of person. He had the character and quality of one who was a leader, and they liked him because of his qualities and his leadership. And what he said, somehow, because they were brought up in demoniac families, but it was said at the very beginning they weren't so indoctrinated. They're just little children. Now, if they got a little bit older, they might become a little more hard cases. Therefore, make sure you preach to your friends. Not too much. Is that all right? Okay. There's an online question. Who wants to read the online question? You're going to read it. Okay.
This is from John Randy. If we have to choose between the institution and the guru, how should we decide?
Oh, come on. Flip a coin. You don't make a choice like that. You align things with spiritual principle. And you follow spiritual principle. And it's a political. The question is a political question. It sounds like a political question, anyways. And so the institution, we try to be part of it. Be part of the solution. If the institution needs some adjusting, let us be part of that which is the adjustment part. And in all circumstances, we follow the guru. We don't question guru, we follow the guru. And the institution needs betterment. You act in such a way it brings betterment. Here we go. You got a question?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I was thinking the entire class, wouldn't the teachers be trying to stop Prahlad from?
They left the classroom. They went to their homes. It says they went to their homes to take care of household duties. So what happens in a classroom if the teacher leaves the classroom? Let's play. That's what they wanted to do. And Prahlad said, no. Let's do devotional service. They said, we'll do it later. Said, no, not later. Komara, the devotional service should begin early, like right now. So it was able to go on because they had left. And then they came back and they saw the kids having kirtan. What? Whoa. Okay. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. It's around the statement which you had in the previous class. Lord is obtained by only one, whom he himself chooses.
That
right?
one. Here we go again. Okay.
So
It's in contrast to those who try to gain his favor through academic and scholarly and austerity and those other, high-grade, Prabhupada calls them high-grade activities. That's not going to attract Krishna. What does attract Krishna is devotion. And then he reciprocates with those persons.
right.
Now,
So even before Prahlad Maharaj was born, he was already chosen then, right? So he got the mercy even before he was born. That means
wait. Let's check the premise now.
okay,
The premise is he was already chosen.
even before he was born.
No, it wasn't exactly he was chosen. Narada understood the soul that's within the womb of Hiranyakashipu's wife. That soul is a very special soul. Now, how did he know that? He didn't choose him. He just knew his quality character because he's Narada Muni. He's a very special soul. Now, how do you know? Prahlad says in chapter 10, Lord Vishnu sent me to this world to teach the way of pure devotional service. He wasn't chosen. He's from the spiritual world to teach the way of pure devotional service. And Narada has the acumen to understand that.
Okay.
You're saying chosen. I'm editing your language.
Okay. So okay, I got it. And so who was Prahlad Maharaj in his previous life?
He was a resident of Vaikuntha, according to what he says
Okay.
to Lord Nrsingadev in Canto 7, Chapter 10. You sent me. Now, little stepping back. Sometimes there are different days there's different yuga cycles, and there are different days of Brahma, and there's different appearances of Prahlad. In the Nrsinga Purana, there's a different description of a different yuga cycle, where it's a different Prahlad besides descending from the spiritual world. But he was already, his merit, in short, his merit was already achieved from a previous life, where he was a fallen Brahmana, but by circumstance he observed Nrsinga Chaturdasi with a full fast. And because of that, because this is in Nrsinga Purana, he asked Prahlad asked Nrsinga, how did I get to this position of being so intimately connected with you in devotion? And Lord Nrsingadev says in Nrsinga Purana, in your previous life you were a Brahmana, da 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 da. You had a disagreement with your girlfriend, da 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 da. You fasted on Nrsinga Chaturdasi, and da 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 da. And for that merit, now you're Prahlad. That's a different yuga cycle, a different Prahlad, but in principle the same. But the merit was already in both cases, and Narada had the acumen to recognize. This is a very special soul. Is that all right?
Yeah. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
You get the last question, Honor.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a clue to everybody else. Don't put your hand up.
In appreciation, a question, Maharaj.
Okay.
The appreciation is just, we've spent 5 classes so far, and you've only covered chapters 5 and 6, and
Yeah.
and we've got Prahlada Maharaj's teachings and
Go right up to
Canto
10.
5, and then chapter 8, and then chapter 9, which is so deep, which has 40 verses, and then there's chapter 10, and then there's Canto 8 with Bali Maharaj. So Prahlad Maharaj has given us a lot
Yes.
to chew on.
Yes.
My question was something that struck me when you went through the 9 processes of bhakti. The phrase is Navalakshana,
9 characteristics.
9 characteristics of bhakti,
Yes.
and we always think of it as 9 processes of bhakti.
Yes.
So wanted to see if there's is this where the process and the goal are the same? Is that
Well, if you're a scholar, you can take a look at the meaning of the word lakshana and why does Prabhupada use the word processes, because it's also perfectly appropriate to say processes. So another way is to say there's characteristics of bhakti, and those characteristics of bhakti make themselves shown in this world as processes, or the shravanam, kirtanam, and those are characteristics of bhakti. That's a characteristic of bhakti. Oh, she's pulling the trump card. Last question.
Yes. Maharaj, I was wondering if there's a fire in the house and you had a 1-volume Srimad Bhagavatam and a 1-volume Chaitanya Charitamrita, what would you do? I would run with the Chaitanya Charitamrita after listening to your class.
So that's not a question, you're making a statement.
But Maharaj, I wanted
Take your
to hear from
computer,
you.
it's got both.
Maharaj, but I wanted to hear from you, Maharaj. What would you do?
That's what I would do. Look at, I'm a sannyasi, and I've got a whole library on this computer. When I get a computer crash, I don't know what, I'm like stuck. There we go. That's what I would do. Bring my computer. Srila Prabhupada ki.